Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. It does feel about 8,000 years since the Reds have played a football game, and they are back this week for the last time, actually. They'll play 2 games in a week, which seems crazy, but that's how we know we're getting towards the end of the season. And joining me as ever is the renowned and the respected David Lynch. And David, has it been nice just to have a little break before the onslaught of the end of the season comes?
Yeah, it's going to be strange actually because obviously it's a little break now, and that's been nice. It's a nice change when you get those because it's been so busy, but it's not going to be as busy as it was now after this. Obviously the loss of those midweek fixtures in the Champions League, and obviously no other competitions that Liverpool are competing in now. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit quieter now during the run-in, which is nice. And I probably imagine a lot less stress as well, because everyone thinks that Liverpool have got it wrapped up, and they pretty much do, don't they? So, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a different vibe these next few weeks, really.
Will be interesting to see how everything unfolds. And we'll start like we do during these or post-international breaks with off-the-field news. And there didn't seem like there was too much happening, in all honesty. But in the last few days, more than anything, there's been some real stories coming up. And there probably is only one place to start, which isn't technically directly Liverpool, but there is a natural link there as well. And I know you all have clocked it. The David Ornstein bomb that landed on the 29th a couple of days ago, the FSG are looking to purchase, to add to their multi-club model, a 51% stake in Segunda Division side Malaga of Spain. I mean, being honest, David, this just came kind of out of nowhere, just literally broke. There'd been lots mooted, but this specific link and this Ornstein exclusive comes from nowhere. Is there almost the latest with this one, or when you've been digging around, what have you found out?
Yeah, not much has kind of moved on since that story. Really, it's very much a case that FSG are in and around the process. They're seeing what it would take and whether they can kind of complete a deal. So definite interest there. In terms of whether that progresses, obviously there's competition, isn't there, from QSI who own PSG. So that's a factor there. So it's not kind of a straightforward one. I think with Bordeaux it was maybe slightly different. There wasn't as much competition there, and if Liverpool had felt that the deal kind of would have suited them, they would have done it in the end. But obviously that wasn't how it turned out. But I think with this one, it's hard to say whether they will get it over the line or not, because there is that competition. There is another party involved who would quite like to buy the club. So it's just kind of one of those, really hang in and see whether it does progress.
Will be interesting to see, because you forget it's almost a year and more since Michael Edwards returned as the CEO of FSG in the football group role there. You'll have seen the way people have reacted. A lot of people have gone different things, that there'll be positives, as in we can maybe put youngsters there if we do get the club naturally for Brexit, the work permit issue, etc. Others have gone down there, well, that's all the summer budget gone, etc. Where are you standing if this does get over the line?
Yeah, well, I would say on that, around the budget, obviously I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's not going to be Liverpool's money that is used to purchase Malaga. If anything goes through, it will very much be FSG's money, and those two are not the same. So, Liverpool aren't reliant on the owners in terms of funding for transfers. So totally separate issue. So I wouldn't worry too much about that one. And yeah, I think we can, we've spoken before about the multi-club model and the clear benefits of that. As you say, with Brexit regulations making it hard to make certain signings, it gives you a stepping stone that you can use there. Say you were to sign a Stefan Bajcetic again at the age of 16, you could sign him for Malaga, park him there for a few years, and then, if he does end up being ready for Liverpool, then you, of course, then are at the front of the queue. You can talk about the ethics of that, and I'm still personally a little bit uncomfortable with the multi-club model idea, but obviously it's the way football is going. It's definitely the way that FSG are looking to go, because, as you say, I was a big part of Michael Edwards' remit coming back in this new role. So, it's obviously something Liverpool are looking to do. But like I say, whether this is going to be the club that they end up getting, obviously we will have to see, and whether that competition edges them out in the end. But Liverpool and FSG, more generally, are clearly very keen to get this done. So if it isn't Malaga in the end, I do think they will get a second club on board soon enough.
Yeah, it does look like that process is moving ever closer. And also off the field, I never thought we'd be focusing on practically a 2 or 3 second clip with no sound at all. But Mo Salah's Instagram story, I know you'll have clocked this. For anyone that hasn't seen it, looks like it's at Trent's house. There's Ibu, there's Szoboszlai, and there's Mo all chatting to Trent Alexander-Arnold on the sofa. And literally, he seems centre stage. So you'll have seen this conspiracy theories galore that it means so much. Have you got any thoughts on this one, or do you think it's just one of those that's getting blown up as things always do?
It's probably just Mo Salah on the wind-up, really, isn't it? I think he knew what kind of impact that would have by putting it out there. But, it's an interesting one because, and certainly on Trent's side of things and definitely Liverpool's side, people talk to at Liverpool, Liverpool haven't been informed that he's going to Real Madrid yet. That deal isn't done, so it's not completely signed and it's not an absolutely 100% done deal, although everybody does expect now that he will go to Real Madrid. So it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? Mo putting that up, they're all having a chat with him. Is there any chance for a little bit of a U-turn there? That would certainly be interesting. But, I personally don't expect it. And as I say, I think it was just Mo Salah, just winding people up, really. But, until that deal's done, maybe we never know that these lads could convince him to change his mind and stick around, because Liverpool, they're offering the contracts, they want him to stay. So the ingredients are there, but I'm not sure there's probably too much in that, really.
Yeah, because ever since the exclusive drop last week about the Real Madrid and all renowned journalists, etc., ran the stories on that. This is the only real development, it's important to say. If it even is a development, there's still nothing really new on that. I think people were more leaning towards the hope of, let's confirm it one way or the other. At least we know, we can plan ahead. But it is just still a bit of a status quo until there's an official announcement, isn't there?
Yeah, and I wonder whether, Liverpool and Trent would rather, if he is to go to Real Madrid, as I say, that's the expectation, whether they would rather just keep that quiet until the league is wrapped up. Maybe they'll see that as kind of a distraction, and they don't want to make that announcement. And if they do make the announcement, they want to make it on kind of good terms with a league title won again. So maybe that's the way they're kind of approaching it. I'm not expecting Arne Slot to sit down in his press conference tomorrow and confirm anything, to be honest. So it's one where I think we're going to be hanging on, waiting for confirmation of that. But maybe it will come, when the league's wrapped up, and that will give him a chance to say, I want to say goodbye properly, and I've got these next few games that I can hopefully appear in, and that's the way he's going to do it. I mean, whether people will take to that kindly and whether he will get a good reception, I'm not so sure, judging by what I've seen on social media, but that seems to be the way they're approaching it.
Yeah, and a fiver says that Vinny O'Connor's opening question is around this subject, no doubt, at tomorrow's press conference. I think we can bank on that one. And Real Madrid, obviously, they're not the favourite club for Liverpool fans for obvious reasons. This rumour, though, well, I know you'll have clocked this as well, that Jurgen Klopp being linked with a return to the dugout and possibly at Real Madrid. This is nonsense, isn't it? Jurgen Klopp is not coming back to club management.
Yeah, I can't see this one being true at all. He's kind of said himself that he doesn't really fancy getting back into the dugout anytime soon, or certainly not in club management anyway. And the demands that would put on him. So, and also, I mean, Real Madrid just doesn't seem like a very Jurgen Klopp club either, does it? I just don't think he'd be a cultural fit there. And, he's got this job now, isn't he, with the Red Bull Group? He seems to be happy there, and that he seems a really good fit for that. He's probably just hanging on to that Germany job comes available as well. I think there's a clause in his contract around that. So, yeah, be a big surprise. I don't expect that there's anything in this at all.
Yeah, we can almost just dismiss that one for all the rumours that are being fabricated around that. But one thing that is definite, and this came out this morning, Liverpool's pre-season tour. So before next season starts, they will head back to Asia. So it'll be Hong Kong, China, and their first ever visit to Japan as well. Summer tours that have been mixed for Liverpool. Sometimes the timing's been referenced. Sometimes it's been referenced as having an impact as well, negatively. Do you think it's positive that they've kind of got this boxed off early, like there's a plan in place and they'll start to put pre-season together for next year?
Yeah, well, I guess what will be helpful this year as well is, of course, everything that's happening with the manager. He's comfortable in the role. He can have a big hand in planning all this because he wasn't obviously able to do that last time. It was you come in, this is what pre-season looks like, go for it. So he will have had some influence in that. So that's always helpful. And yeah, as you say, just getting the plans in place and getting everything lined up and so they can already start to plan for next season, because all that is going on now. It's not just what your pre-season plans, where are you staying, how are you going to do your preparation, it's what players are you going to sign, what's the squad going to look like. All that stuff is kind of going on now, and I guess this March international break will have been massive for all of that. So it's another kind of step forward to next season and being put in place. And it just seems mad that we're looking forward to that already when, still the league title to win, still this season to end. But they come around relentlessly, don't they? So it won't be long till we're talking about the games on this pre-season tour, I'm sure.
Yeah, it just doesn't stop at all. And maybe there is the cynicism of the fan base, who knows? But a lot of tweets, a lot of suggestions with this tour, and especially looking at it's the first ever visit to Japan. Does that affect Endo's future at all? Liverpool won't be wanting to sell a Japanese captain just before they go there?
I'm not sure that the football department will be run by the commercial side of things in that sense. I don't think they get to make decisions around that. I still think that there are big doubts over Endo's future coming into this summer, because there is interest in him and he hasn't played much this season and probably wants to. So I wouldn't be hugely shocked if he wasn't part of that travelling squad. But of course, moves do get delayed anyway. Moves come later in the summer. So there is every chance he is still around. But equally, I still think, like I say, that there are big question marks over his future. And I could easily see him leaving this summer, to be honest, regardless of the fact that Liverpool are going to Japan.
Yeah, maybe it won't be quite what the commercial teams want him, but it is about football. And with that, it seems right to talk about the transfer situation as well. I mean, various links, but probably the biggest story in wider football, the Premier League especially, I know you'll have clocked this, there's almost going to be 2 transfer windows this summer, all around the Club World Cup. So literally that season finishes on, I think it's the 26th of May, isn't it? Crystal Palace, the final home game of the season. And the first transfer window opens literally on the 1st of June, 5 days later. Then it closes again, and then it reopens after 6 days. It's the strangest break ever. But do you think, not just for Liverpool, but maybe for other clubs, does that change the way business might happen? As in, normally there's a bit of a gap before the end of the season, but you can literally be selling and buying players 5 days after the season finishes.
Yeah, it's I can't really get my head around the reasons why. I know obviously it's linked to the Club World Cup, but I just can't quite sort of understand what this is all about, really, and why it desperately needed to be done or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's a strange one. Again, it's one of those where, like any change, like the change to the Champions League format, for example, when you come in, you don't know how it's going to affect things until it actually happens and you see it. And, maybe you will see some really early sales or some really early purchases for Liverpool just to get the business done. It's a really, particular. I guess if you're one of those clubs like Liverpool that tends to really nail down who they want and do a lot of legwork before you make your moves, maybe you could see some really early moves in that window that when it first opens up. It's unusual, and we kind of don't, like I say, we don't know the effects that's going to have on the market, who are going to be the early movers and who aren't going to touch that first window until it kind of happens and it comes around. But it just adds another kind of layer of intrigue to the transfer market, which obviously is interesting enough anyway.
Yeah, and the names are interesting enough at the moment. I mean, there's a couple of names that are being linked regularly, and one's existing. We've talked about Alexander Isak a million times so far, but Ryan Taylor of the Mirror and a few others have mentioned this name now as well. French youngster, 22, at Frankfurt, doing very well this season, Hugo Ekitike. And there's a lot of traffic, a lot of interest for this player on social media. Fabrizio Romano even saying he suspects he will end up in the Premier League. There is a large portion of our fan base, it seems, online have got an interest in this player. Have you heard anything on him at all?
Well, the thing is with these is kind of it's still a little bit early to know exactly. He's 100% a target for Liverpool, or they're still we're probably at the point now where it does start to get a little bit more concrete and decisive in terms of who they're targeting. But I can't, vouch for saying that I know everything about that at the moment. But one thing I could say is, look, you've got someone who's 22 years old, is banging in goals at that rate in a top 5 European league. Liverpool will be watching him on a regular basis. There's absolutely no question. So when anyone writes at this point that Liverpool are interested, I wouldn't doubt that for a second. Obviously, the big question then is, did he do anything about it? Did he really kind of, is he the one that they want to replace Darwin Núñez? And, we just don't know that at the moment. But he's an interesting name, isn't he? And he is scoring goals. You do kind of always slightly worry about players who are coming from scoring a lot of goals in the Bundesliga, because we've seen that before. And they've not been able to quite bring it to the Premier League. So we'll see in terms of that, because it does look like he is going to move to the Premier League, whether it's Liverpool or otherwise. But yeah, he's definitely an interesting name, and one I'd certainly wouldn't rule out at this point.
It does feel like you say that the market's starting to, it's early days, so it's not fully taken shape, but things are starting to develop. And Ekitike, Isak, Alvarez, there's quite a few names linked before. We've talked about Kuna at the same time as well. And he gave an interview, literally, didn't he, the other day, where he said, yeah, I want to move on to the next level. He's one that we've mentioned again. You'd fully suspect he's on Liverpool's radar with that known release clause and the price.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. They'd be daft at that kind of, when he has got a release clause like that. He's got Premier League experience. His rate for scoring goals in the Premier League is very, very good. You'd be mad not to keep an eye on him. But I guess with Cunha, it's just that question mark over character. He's had a couple of bad red cards, hasn't he, this season? Yeah. And you just weren't, is he a little bit explosive in terms of that? And you worry about that. But again, it definitely one that will be on the radar. And I personally, I think he's fantastic. I think he'd be, if Liverpool are looking for a Firmino type, I just don't think there's anyone out there who would represent better value for money than him. So, personally, I'd be all for him. But we'll see whether Liverpool's recruitment staff agree with me.
They're definitely looking at someone who can play the 9.5, or in the forward line. There's no doubts about that at all. I suppose the other names that, again, Luis Diaz keeps getting mentioned by a few, that Liverpool are not in any sort of renewal talks. That seems to be completely dead, any chance for a new contract there. So there's a big question mark that just gets bigger and bigger. And also, I know you clocked this the other day, Gyökeres, Arsenal seem favourites. So with Arsenal seeming the favourites or strong interest, as it reported by David Ornstein, do you think that means that if they're moving there, other targets could be available for us, shall we say?
Yeah, but I wouldn't get kind of too excited about Isak, for example. I mean, I know I've put a dampener on this quite frequently, so I apologise to everyone for that. But I just really, really struggle to see it. Just the how much it will cost, what else Liverpool have got to do this summer. The fact Newcastle are in such a strong situation with him, 3 years of contract left. He's won a trophy there now. They're still in contention to get in the Champions League. I mean, if they get in the Champions League, it's game over. He's not going anywhere, let's be honest. If they don't, maybe that opens the door slightly, but still, like I say, the contract situation, won a trophy. Can they just get one more year out of him before they make a load of money on him? So I'm really sceptical that he will move at all, to be honest. But that, maybe Arsenal have got that same feeling, which is why, you're looking at Gyökeres instead of Isak, and they will no doubt be looking at Ekitike as well, because it's not a massive number 9 market. And I would say that all of them as well, Isak aside, probably come with question marks. And even with Isak, you'd say, he has had injuries from time to time, hasn't he? So, there's a few number 9s that are going to move, but it's a very small market, really. And it's going to be interesting to see who ends up where, because, Liverpool are definitely going to be involved, aren't they? Obviously, we've spoken about Arsenal, and there's several other clubs as well who will be in there as well. I'd say Man United could need to get rid of their 2 centre forwards and get a better one, but we'll see where they're up to. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of competition for very few players and a few question marks over the ones that are available. So I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how that kind of shakes out, who ends up where, and just how well they actually do in the end.
Yeah, all we know for definite is Liverpool will be in for one of them. Which one it is, we're just not 100% certain yet, and we probably won't know for a fair while. But 2 other links, probably not household names, I'd say, but one at Porto, a right back, which naturally, with everything that developed last week, it has come into the focus. Martim, I didn't pronounce that wrong. Martim Fernandez, Portuguese right back, under 21. A lot of people, and we looked at him on transfer market metrics, there's a lot of potential there, but people will shout about the sample size. Heard anything on this one or this name at all?
No, can't say I have, to be honest. Not anything I've heard anything on really with this one. So, maybe some truth in him. Maybe, again, one of those where he's playing for a decent sized club at a good level. So Liverpool will have scouts who've watched him, no question about that. But whether that's turning into anything. But I think what's interesting on this one actually is that, what do they do around right back if Trent leaves in terms of, are you promoting Bradley and then is your signing behind him someone who is 19 years of age and can be the backup for a while? Is that kind of how you approach it? Or do you sign someone who's a little bit more ready, who can come in and kind of still keep Bradley as that backup for a little while? That's interesting to me because I think Bradley's good enough to play for Liverpool, and be a consistent starter for Liverpool, to be honest. Obviously, he can't do the things that Trent does, but no other right back in the world can, so that's absolutely fine. And Liverpool will have to adapt how they approach games. But for me, I would like to see Bradley as the main starter next season at right back if Trent is to leave. So if that's going to be the case, then signing like this I could probably get on board with, because it is someone with potential who can come in, will happily be the backup for a few years and go about it that way, and that would kind of cement Conor Bradley is the first choice there. So it's interesting from that aspect. But like I say, I haven't personally heard this link, so not one I can back up or vouch for at the moment.
Interesting. And Brace DeVille was asking there, any chance Liverpool could go in for Gyökeres? Well, we kind of answered there, Brace, about the striker market. It's just hard to see. We'll have to see what does eventually unfold for there. And I suppose if you have got Conor Bradley for you as number one and has the ability to do number one position at right back, does that mean essentially it makes Frimpong less of a chance of a move for you? Because that's the other one that keeps coming out, doesn't it? The plays right wing back for Leverkusen, Dutch international, well-known, would count as homegrown, but he is a starter for a team that's been in the Champions League and won the title. So there's no way surely Frimpong's coming to be a backup or even in his mind share the minutes with Conor Bradley.
Yeah, I'm a little bit sceptical about this link as well, because I just think he doesn't play right wing back like a right back at all, does he? Yeah. He's more wing than wing back. It's kind of, he's basically playing as a forward. So, to come into Liverpool and be asked to play right back where, you will have some defensive duties, I just think it's such an easy link that people are kind of making. I'd be really, really surprised if there was any truth in terms of him coming in as a Trent Alexander-Arnold replacement. And as I say, I would like, and I feel like Liverpool are going to promote Conor Bradley, and therefore, as you say, the person who comes in at right back would be someone to back him up rather than a guaranteed starter like Frimpong, which he would presumably expect to be.
Yeah, and fingers crossed, Conor Bradley's contract's on the list of things to sort, but we'll come back to him as a player later. And the only other one to mention, this name has come up as well, Mohamed Amoura. So Algerian international, scored a hat-trick, to be fair, during the international break for Algeria. Can play 9, but also on the left wing. Short, but very quick. And a lot of people, when we profiled him, looks very much like, as it was called, an Edward-style signing. Very much one of the data ones that's not heralded. Probably, I'm guessing, because it's not going to be a heralded one. Not really heard much on this one at all.
No, and I think with this, it's kind of one of those where maybe we'd see this come to fruition if quite a lot happens in terms of outgoings. Obviously, there's so many doubts, isn't there, going into this summer, and we've spoken about quite frequently, really, about the idea that Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota, pretty well basically every one of the forwards except Cody Gakpo you can make a case for might be leaving this summer. So. Maybe he's on that list and someone they're looking at in terms of that. But at the moment, it doesn't look to me like someone Liverpool would be making a priority signing, or he wouldn't be the Darwin Núñez replacement, for example. It's maybe someone to bring in and kind of bolster your attack if you lose a couple more But I mean, again, we're talking about huge turnover, aren't we, at the moment? But we'll see. Yeah. We'll see kind of how that shakes out. But again, it's very early. We're not even at the point where they can plan for kind of what the summer's going to look like. But also there are things that you can't plan for in terms of, are Barcelona going to come up with enough money for Luis Diaz? Is a Saudi club going to come and he's actually going to want to go? All these things that are very, very hard to predict. The one you can predict is that Darwin Núñez, the money will be there for him and that he will want to go. And you can pretty much predict that. But everything else that's happening around that forward line is tricky. So there'll be a few kind of names thrown up as potentials, and maybe this guy will be one of them. But we're still a little bit far away from that being anything concrete, I'd say.
Yeah, fingers crossed there will be things that break in the near future, but there's still a title to be won in the meantime. And you talked about links and things that might have to happen. I know you'll have plotted the Mel Reddy article about Trent Alexander-Arnold. She talked about him in depth. She gave quotes. And maybe bizarrely, out of everything, the thing that was focused on, I understand this, was if he's departing, it was this line: when a good offer would be accepted for Harvey Elliott this summer. Now, we've talked about Harvey Elliott and his minutes, that possibly not being too happy, understandably, about the whole situation. But it almost felt like the first time a journalist had put it into the mainstream, almost like a club line, so to speak. Yes, we would take a good offer for Harvey Elliott. I think this isn't really a surprise to you, though, this one, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, it's just been clear, hasn't it, in terms of his place in the squad at the moment. He hasn't played a lot of football, and that Liverpool would be open to selling him. I don't think comes as a massive surprise. I mean, it's a shame because I think they'd be daft to sell him. I think there's huge potential there. I think he can be a great player. I think he already is a very, very good player, and he's young, got a lot of experience already, and he absolutely loves playing for Liverpool. So it's kind of maddening to me, really, that Liverpool can't find a spot for him. And I guess that the interesting thing will be whether kind of something happens in terms of, does he actually get sold, or does he decide he wants to stay and fight? It's going to be an interesting one in terms of how this plays out over the summer. But I feel like he's going to, at the very least, have a decision to make on what he does, and it doesn't look like his prospects are improving, does it?
No, it doesn't. And it seems strange that when we talked a year ago, listen, football moves quickly, but we were saying how well it was going for the youngsters and the homegrown players. But you think to now where we are realistically, we've talked about... I'll be back in 1 second. I've just got to answer the door quickly and let someone in. I'm sorry to everyone who's watching. I'll be back in 1 second. That will be Michael Edwards, no doubt, at the door, just checking and making sure David Lynch is not giving away any secrets at all. But thinking about it, people, at the moment, if you fast forward, let me go back, actually. Let's rewind to about 12 months ago. We were talking about a boom period. Do you remember we had that Carabao Cup final and thinking that all those youngsters doing well? Now, nothing's ever absolutely set in stone for any of these youngsters at all, but it feels like there's real question marks all of a sudden. You go back to that time that was positive, and probably this one, I think, David, is I was just telling or explaining to the viewers there, 12 months ago, positive for the academy. Now, 12 months fast forward, question marks around Harvey Elliott, Jarell Quansah being linked with a move away to Newcastle, even Connor Bradley with a couple of years left to go, people saying, can he be first choice? Issues potentially around his contract as well. Do you think for this summer, homegrown, that word keeps getting mentioned and people say it's being blown out of proportion, but do you think that's really going to come into the focus in the plan?
Well, that again is kind of why I find it crazy that there's kind of this willingness to maybe consider offers for Harvey Elliott. Homegrown players are expensive, and and when you get ones that come along that want to play for you and are very good, then why are you kind of getting rid of them? I don't really understand it. And similarly with Jarell Quansah, clearly there's the fact that those stories are out there and that there's a bit of a price tag on his head. It makes me think that there's a willingness there to sell as well. But and again, on top of all of that as well, we're already talking about so much turnover this summer. The turnover that you can predict will happen if you throw in any extras and any like little surprise moves, like a Harvey Elliott departure and a Quanta or whatever, it starts to get crazy. I mean, we can't seriously be thinking about coming into this summer that you're gonna have 8 out and 8 in or whatever. It's that it seems that's not a good way to kind of go about defending a title, I would say, because I think you'll lose a few weeks or months to kind of gelling this all together and trying to get it to work. So it's just really, really kind of interesting storylines going into the summer. And I think it's one of the most fascinating summers I can remember coming into covering Liverpool, to be honest, for all those reasons, for all the kind of question marks around homegrown players, the who might go, the ones that will go and need replacing. There's going to, I think there is going to be turnover. I don't think that can be avoided, but it's the scale of it and who the kind of surprise departures are. It's absolutely fascinating. And I think, you start losing players like Harvey Elliott, who you would have thought when a year ago you would have said were nailed on to play for Liverpool for the next 10 years. Then it starts to get very, very interesting. It also puts a lot of pressure on the recruitment staff to make a lot of right decisions in terms of incomings and not getting those wrong. So it's going to be interesting. I'll say that much.
Yeah, Rick 13953 saying that was probably Mo Salah knocking on the door saying he signed an extension. We hope that. Adam also saying, which is true, for all the change, all the turnover, it does feel like saying there, what's the last time or when was the last time we signed an extension for a player? There is just so much to do this summer. It is absolutely unreal. We'll see how that all unfolds. But before we even get to the summer, there's just the small matter of a Merseyside derby on Wednesday, Anfield under the lights. And I'm massively looking forward to this because it feels like 100 years since we played a game, and hoping there's going to be positive answers as we go through this step by step. Just focus on the players that went on international duty, because there was a few question marks, wasn't there, around Gravenberch withdrew, Alisson we think was concussion, and a few others. Is there any question mark still, or do we think we're all good on those that went on international duty and came back?
Yeah, so both of those expected to be absolutely fine. I think with Alisson, it was just concussion protocols and they wanted to look after him. But obviously that game was ages ago now, so he should be absolutely fine to be part of this one. And Gravenberch was kind of precautionary, so again, should be fine to play in this one. That was certainly the expectation when he did withdraw from international duty. So should be a clean bill of health in terms of those two, and no other issues as far as I'm aware at the moment in terms of injuries picked up on international. So Liverpool should be looking in decent shape.
I mean, touch wood, just in case Karma is listening, but actually out of all the players, you thought Gravenberch maybe needed a rest. If all the others coming back, this could actually be as good as it gets, shall we say, for the international break, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're always worrying, aren't you, that you could have this run in. I still think Liverpool would have won the league regardless, but you just didn't want a big injury that would have made it a little bit more tricky for them, would have added any more pressure or anything like that. So always a relief when you get players back. And as you say, with Gravenberch, no bad thing whatsoever that he picked up that knock in the cup final. Gets a bit of a rest now, because I think it's been overblown really about the tiredness in the Liverpool squad. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of that talk, but I think one player who is definitely showing signs of fatigue for me is Gravenberch, and understandably so. So for him to get a little bit of a rest there was definitely a good thing, and hopefully we see the best version of him coming back for these last few games, particularly as the schedule's not as busy. That should really help him, because he's been kind of running to the ground this season, hasn't he? So I think that will be helpful that he's had a little bit of a rest before this run in now.
So fingers crossed, Alisson, Grav, it seems absolutely fine. The right back situation, because obviously the focus on Trent has been on something completely different, and there's been rumours, as you'll have seen for the last 24 hours. Is there any potential good news around Connor Bradley, do we think?
Yeah, so I'm hearing he's training this week, which is really, really good news. So expecting him to be back, which I just think is massive, because obviously Trent isn't available at the moment. So, I think, so it's not just the case of you missing Trent and therefore your game falls apart. It's that you're missing Bradley as well. And Quanta is, he's a good young player, isn't he? Real talented player, but he isn't a natural right back, and he can be pressed. He can be made to look very uncomfortable in possession. He doesn't know his angles so much in that position as well. So, Liverpool have got no real outlet down that side. And it also kills Salah having someone who's not really dragging players away from him. So, he can he finds it harder to pick out pockets of space as well. So I think it'd be absolutely massive to get Conor Bradley back for this one. And, he knows what a derby's all about as well. Perfect player for that. So, yeah, hopefully, and the expectation is that he will be available for this one, which is, a major boost, I think.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That will be absolutely huge. And, they'll want to be careful with him because of his muscle injuries, the hamstrings already. They don't want to sort of go back into another situation, especially if they're looking for him to be the first choice with this one. If there is any doubt in the weirdest way, would you think Kwanzaa for Everton, a physical and aerial side, might actually not be the worst game? Because it's not quite like the Carabao Cup, is it, with Newcastle? Everton will look to make it an ugly game this Wednesday.
Yeah, but I think they'll struggle to do that as well as they did at Goodison Park. I think the game's going to be played much more on Liverpool's terms, which, if that is then the case, then you're coming up against a low block and you need people who can kind of unpick it. You need more footballers on the pitch, really, than lads who can head the ball away. I think playing Kwanzaa at right back at Goodison Park, you probably wouldn't have lost that much, really, because Liverpool couldn't progress the ball anyway. And they were poor in that aspect. So it was about winning your battles and winning headers and being physical. So it probably would have been helpful there. But I think in a game at Anfield, you need someone like Bradley who can dribble, who can control the ball in tight spaces, who can pick out little passes. And Jarell Quansah doesn't quite have that. So, yeah, I believe that Bradley's going to be fit. And I think that is really good news to Liverpool.
Yeah, does feel it could be such an important part of this. And with all the players, fingers crossed, like coming back and availability, Mo Salah will be past Ramadan, now Eid Mubarak. So, happy Eid Mubarak to everyone who's been celebrating. Is it hard? Is it easy to pick this lineup? Because I'm really struggling with everything we're seeing right now, because even Cody Gakpo's played the few games for Holland, so you think he comes into the mix. How confident are you of not 11, but a good number of positions in this one?
Yeah, I think because the manager's been pretty settled, hasn't he, in terms of his starting 11 this season, and largely anyway. So I think a lot of it does kind of pick itself. I mean, you can go Alisson, Conor Bradley right back, Canate, Van Dijk, Robertson. I think you can almost certainly say that five will start. Midfield, it will be the three, won't it? It'll be Gravenberch, McAllister, and Szoboszlai, no question about that. Barring any kind of injuries or issues there, and then your only question mark is kind of in the forward line, because he hasn't had someone who's really nailed down that centre forward spot this season. It's been up for grabs because no one has really played that well. So that's been the reason that no one's kind of been a consistent starter there. So you say Salah would start. I think it's good that Gakpo's had minutes and he got a goal as well, and that he looked a bit more like he's in rhythm. So again, if he's back to himself, then surely he starts, because he has been a starter. And then it's about, okay, do you go with Diaz, do you go with Jota, or do you go with Núñez? And again, he'd probably make that decision purely on training. But I think on the basis of what we've seen so far this season, maybe it will be Diaz, really. That's the one that's kind of worked better than any of them. So, maybe that is, I've talked myself into that 11, but the very few, I think, points of debate in it, really, and left wing and centre forward are probably the main two.
Yeah, probably true, and a bit of a damning indictment on the two number 9s and maybe where their future holds, but that's a question for another day. And the final one for this, they'll be pumped up for it anyway, because it's Anfield under the lights. It's a derby. There's so much to look forward to, but everyone's going to go back to that 2-2 draw at Goodison where Tarkowski smashed it into the top corner last minute. That, their cup final, the boards coming down, all that type of thing. And the Decore Curtis Jones incident right near the end as well. There's plenty of spice, but Liverpool will be bang up for this one, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, without the kind of Goodison aspect as well, I think Everton would have found it very difficult to match Liverpool. It has such an effect. And, the hope is that Anfield can kind of do the same to Everton and make them worse. And, and also it's not just making, I think Goodison was a bit of a leveller, really. And the reality is that Liverpool are many, many, many points ahead of Everton at the moment.
Yeah.
So they are a far better side, and they tend to show it at Anfield as well. So they'll be looking to do that, and I think I expect that they will, and I think we'll see a proper Liverpool performance and really see Everton put to the sword, because they'll want payback for the way that derby finished, for the bad blood that was around that, the touchline bans and the red cards and everything. It was it was a proper derby, wasn't it? But this is a chance for Liverpool to have a proper derby that's played on their terms and to get those bragging rights. So I'm confident for Liverpool for this one.
Yeah, I think many of us are confident. Many of us are hopeful, especially to go 3 points closer to that Premier League title. So there we go, people. There is a derby under the lights on Wednesday in the immediate future. A little bit further down the line, FSG may be looking at purchasing a second club. That may come to fruition. A bit further down the line, there's a transfer window 1, then a transfer window 2. We know Liverpool will be active, but we've absolutely not a clue who that will be for right now. We'll all have to see how this unfolds. All it leaves me to say is ever, David, for the time, the insight, and the analysis, it is much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters